Greetings, mortal. In news that will doubtless shock those who have spent the better part of a decade in blissful suspension of disbelief, Ashes of Creation, the self-proclaimed revolutionary MMORPG that promised to reinvent the genre while taking its sweet time about it, has encountered a minor administrative hiccup. Intrepid Studios, the plucky outfit behind this eternal work in progress, has apparently decided to part ways with its entire staff. One might call it a streamlining measure, or one feeling particularly charitable. The trouble began, as these things so often do, mere weeks after the game finally shuffled onto Steam in early access form late last year. Players who had waited patiently, some might say masochistically, through years of alpha tests, cosmetic shop updates, and monthly live streams promising that launch was just around the corner, honestly, were at last rewarded with a version of the game they could actually play. Early reports suggest it ran, more or less, which is frankly more than many had dared hope for. Alas, the triumph was short-lived. On or around January 31, 2026, creative director and majority stakeholder Stephen Sheriff announced his resignation in a tone of wounded principle. He cited irreconcilable differences with the board over decisions he could not, in good conscience, support. Observers with even a passing familiarity with corporate governance were quick to note that said board consists, by all available accounts, of Mr. Sheriff and his husband. One does wonder what manner of ethical impasse could arise in such intimate deliberations, perhaps a disagreement over the color scheme of the next cosmetic mount. Following Mr. Sheriff's departure, the remaining leadership team reportedly followed suit, in protest, a gesture of solidarity that has left the studio somewhat light on leadership. A layoff notice dated February 2 then circulated among the staff, politely informing them that their services would no longer be required. Sources close to the matter, which is to say, anyone with access to the internet, suggest the studio is now effectively shuttered, with servers likely to follow the staff into quiet retirement at some point. The community response has been, shall we say, measured. Long-term supporters, who have valiantly defended the project against accusations of vaporware since its record-breaking 2017 Kickstarter, now find themselves in the awkward position of explaining why their faith has been rewarded with what appears to be a rather abrupt full stop. Forums and Reddit threads brim with the usual stages of grief, though many seem to have skipped straight to bargaining. Perhaps this is just a restructuring, some venture. Maybe Stephen will buy it back and carry on. One suspects the Ashes are not quite that cooperative. Critics, meanwhile, have adopted a tone of restrained vindication. For years they have pointed out that a project funded largely through an ever-expanding catalog of virtual hats, mounts, and lifetime subscriptions might eventually struggle to translate enthusiasm into a finished product. The early access launch, complete with a fresh wave of cosmetic bundles timed rather conveniently with Steam visibility, did little to quiet suggestions of a final cash grab. Steam itself is reportedly looking into the matter, which is reassuring, though one doubts Valve's refund policy extends to existential disappointment. To recap the saga for those fortunate enough to have missed it, Ashes of Creation burst onto the scene promising a living, reactive world where player actions would meaningfully shape the landscape through an innovative node system. Caravans would be ambushed, cities would rise and fall, and corruption would punish the wicked in satisfyingly dramatic fashion. None of this, it was stressed, would involve pay-to-win mechanics, merely the opportunity to spend several $100s on decorative items that conveyed no competitive advantage whatsoever. Quite. Development proceeded at a leisurely pace. Alpha 1 arrived, then Alpha 2, then various spot tests and apocalypse battle royales to keep interest simmering. Monthly development updates became a ritual, with Mr. Sheriff appearing on stream to demonstrate promising new features while carefully avoiding firm release dates. The community grew ever more invested, both emotionally and financially, as the cosmetic shop expanded to rival some small nations' GDPs. By 2025 the game had entered what was described as its final pre-launch phase, with regular content drops and an expanding persistent test realm. Early access on Steam was heralded as the beginning of the end, of development, that is. Players logged in, poked at the node system, marveled at the caravan gameplay, and generally agreed that, yes, it showed potential. Potential has always been Ashes of Creation's strongest feature. And now, potential appears to be all that remains. Servers continue to run for the time being, allowing dedicated players to wander the empty nodes in solemn reflection. Refunds have been requested in industrial quantities, though Kickstarter backers from 2017 may find the statute of limitations on optimism has quietly expired. One cannot help but admire the symmetry. A game titled Ashes of Creation has, in the end, produced a considerable quantity of ashes and remarkably little creation. It joins a proud tradition of ambitious MMOs that promised to change everything and instead changed only the bank balances of their developers, for a while, at least. Whether this truly marks the end remains technically uncertain. Mr. Sharif has hinted at future statements that may clarify matters, possibly in a public filing of some sort. One awaits these revelations with the same bated breath once reserved for the next development live stream. In the meantime, the MMO community moves on, ever hungry for the next bold vision that will definitely, this time, deliver. One suspects the cycle shall continue unabated. After all, hope springs eternal, particularly when accompanied by a limited edition Phoenix mount for $100. This is your humble servant the Nerd Reaper, and I put the grim gaming takes in the bag.